Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I'm your host, Maryann Petri, and there's a non-denominational retreat at the Resolution Center of Jacksonville, Florida. This will be a time of support and renewal for parents and grandparents on the journey of parental alienation, standing strong in resilience, paving the way for good health and a great future. This parental alienation retreat will take place April 22nd through the 24th, 2022. I will have all the information in the podcast notes. I have a new guest. His name is Dr. Paul Zeitz. He and I were talking, and he's got two websites. One is Keeping Kids Safe and The Brave Movement. About 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 13 boys experience child sexual abuse at some point in their childhood. This public health crisis has been put on the back burner for too long and was only exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Disruptions in routine, isolation, more time spent at home and online, financial insecurity, stress, and anxiety increase the risk of incidents of violence against children. The data shows COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted communities of color, further exposing long-time racial inequities. We also know that long-standing structural barriers have made it more difficult for Black and Indigenous communities to access a variety of critical services focused on prevention, healing, and justice to end child sexual violence. In some cases, the system designed to protect individuals and families have actually caused harm and exacerbated existing inequities. This is unacceptable. We must work together to protect every child and serve all families and communities. We can create a healthier, safer world for every child. So I welcome you, Dr. Paul Zeitz. How are you doing? And how did all this start?
Great to be here. Thanks, Maryann, for having me. I'm happy to connect with you and your audience. Yeah, so I am a physician by training, but about 25 or 30 years ago, I decided I was going to do political advocacy. I've been working on complex challenges and bringing issues that are difficult to solve and focusing my energy on that. About 10 or 12 years ago, I actually had a breakthrough in my own personal journey, and I had realized at that point that I was a survivor of sexual violence at the hands of my father. I had an amnesic barrier for 40 years and really didn't know. I knew I was messed up, but I didn't know why. And I had a healing opportunity to kind of reveal that, and I've been working on that ever since. At that time, I made a commitment to do whatever I could to protect other children that were susceptible to this kind of sexual violence right now, living right now, and of course, all future generations. So over the past decade, I've been experimenting and exploring this space. And over the last 2 years, we've been really successful I've been successful in working with a whole range of partners and organizations, building a movement, if you will, to end childhood sexual violence here in the United States through what is called Keep Kids Safe. It's a movement here in the US. And also we're launching tomorrow a global movement called the Brave Movement.
That is something, that's a lot of work. You have a lot of people helping you, I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. These are movements. So there are 8 organizing partners that are part of a steering group as part of Keep Kids Safe. And there's also a survivors council that's being formed. So people with lived experience like myself from all walks of life can be part of the agenda setting and the policy advocacy work that Keep Kids Safe is embarking upon. And then there's many, many more organizations and stakeholders that get behind some of the initiatives that we're working on. There's many coalitions operating at the local level, state level, and at the federal level. And what Keep Kids Safe is trying to do is to connect the dots, to put forward big, bold, transformational solutions, and to really build a movement that's going to win big commitments from the federal government. We're trying to do the same thing globally through the Brave Movement.
Mm-hmm. Now, does this also involve, child trafficking?
Yeah, we are using the language that I'm using is very kind of specific. And when I say childhood sexual violence, we're creating a language that encompasses all forms of childhood sexual violence, including trafficking, child marriage, child abuse, child exploitation, online, offline. We're focusing on connecting the dots between all the places and zones where sexual violence happens. It happens in families, it happens in schools, in religious organizations, in athletic programs, and it's happening online and offline. So we're trying to, our movements are bringing together survivor leaders who have experienced violence in all those different ways, because we have a common experience. We have a common experience of being shattered as children or adolescents. And we're advancing this idea of prevention, kind of reducing the risk dramatically to zero if possible, so that children living today aren't subjected to this. So there's a lot of work that we can do in that area. We're also working on healing, making sure that people that have been subjected to childhood sexual violence as children or as adults, as they're on their lifelong healing journey after experiencing that kind of trauma, and their families who are also affected, also are all given the healing services that are required. And then the third pillar that we're advocating for is around justice, to make sure that perpetrators and institutions that are complicit or complacent with allowing childhood sexual violence to occur under their guidance, under their oversight, also are held accountable and are changing the rules of the game so we can end this. Additionally, I would say the technology companies have a huge burden of responsibility right now, as there is this huge upswing on online child abuse and exploitation, which is leading to increasing in-person sexual violence. So it's all interrelated, and so we're taking on the whole kahuna.
Now, what do you think of foster care?
I think we have to do a lot of work at understanding how the foster care system is working or not working. We do know that there are instances of situations where children who are put into the foster care system can be subjected to sexual violence at an early age or during childhood or adolescence. That is completely wrong and must be stopped. We have to do a better job at identifying and screening potential foster families or foster parents. We have to monitor what's happening while kids are placed in these homes, and we have to strengthen the ability of the systems to monitor and detect that so we can eliminate that.
How do you get that to go in motion?
Well, I think our approach is kind of making sure that we understand like what is happening right now, what is the situation, what is the frequency or incidence of childhood sexual violence that's occurring, for example, in the foster care system, as you're asking about. Is that happening in every state? Is it happening more in one state versus the other state? Are there certain geographic areas within a state, say, that this is happening in higher frequency? Is it certain economic level, or is it related to people of color, or is it not related to that? All that kind of analysis needs to happen. And then I think you have to look at the federal laws and the state laws that oversee this and try to strengthen and buttress what's happening now. But also we have to bring forward bold and transformational solutions. So I think that I would welcome and invite your audience and other stakeholders that are immersed in those child protection foster care systems to really work on what would you want to see happen. If you had a magic wand and you were the president of the United States, or you were a member of Congress, or you were a governor or a city official, what are the policies and regulations and laws that you want to see in place to transform what's happening now? That's what we're doing a lot of work on that. In the United States, I'm happy to tell you that last November 18th, we launched a U.S. national blueprint, which can be found on the Keep Kids Safe website, keep-kids-safe.org website. And this blueprint was a year and a half of work, consulting with experts, consulting with stakeholders around the country. There is a section on there about child protection and foster care systems. It could be strengthened. This is just our first iteration of priorities. So I welcome you and your listeners to help us create the best possible solutions.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you also look into the family court system as far as breaking up families, and there's child abuse going on, kind of veiled through family court?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a doctor by training, so I'm not a lawyer by training, but there are lawyers and organizations that focus on monitoring and accountability and oversight of the foster care child protection system, as well as the impact of this on the court case. There is a section in the blueprint that discusses the pipeline from some of these systems like foster care or child protection into the legal system and then into the prison pipeline. And so there is analysis about how there's like a cycle, a systemic cycle that is occurring that's trapping people, if they are a survivor of sexual violence, they're dealing with PTSD, they might not be getting the services that they need, and then they may be acting out or getting themselves in other kinds of trouble, and they might end up in the legal system and in the prison system. So I think, I don't have the data on this, but I've heard from experts that a large percentage of people in prison may be survivors of childhood sexual violence. I don't know if we know, I haven't seen data on that, but I'm sure it's a large percent or a significant percent that we need to really kind of dig in on and understand those dynamics.
Yeah, that would be interesting to have that percentage. I don't doubt it. It's just so wrong what's going on in this world. It seems like it has even gotten worse. Do you feel that way too?
I think there's a couple things going on. Certainly the COVID pandemic exacerbated or worsened the crisis that was already going on and has been part of the human experience since probably humans were around. What's crazy about this is that it's kind of ubiquitous. It occurs in every culture, every community, no matter economic status, no matter race or gender. It's happening to children and adolescents everywhere. We also are in this new era, as you know, of the digital and the internet and the social media world. So our kids are being raised up now, living on TikTok and Twitter and Facebook and all these other social media apps. And those are becoming very dangerous for all kids. There are trollers out there trolling for kids. And so any child under 18 is susceptible to being trapped by a troller. These trollers are, sending out 1,000 messages an hour, trying to find one or two people that will respond. So really, it's all children are vulnerable to this now. And so that is creating a worsening situation. And that is creating like incentives for these perpetrators to kind of expand their networks and expand this violent behavior that they are addicted to. Then with COVID, as you know, kids were left, homeschooled or left at home. Frequently, they may have been left with perpetrators in their family. Or the stress of COVID may have brought forward sexual violence in ways that might not have been happening before. So there's a lot of factors that have made it worse during the last couple of years, for sure. The internet crisis, I think, the online explosion of child sexual abuse materials and their dissemination, is kind of a major crisis right now. I think there's also another phenomena, which is that there's peer-to-peer posting of sexual materials. So there's like adult perpetrators of children under 18, and there's a whole dynamic around that. And then there's like another dynamic, which is like peer-to-peer exposure of sexually explicit materials online. And I think that the interrelationship between all these things going on, we're still, it's a rapidly evolving kind of environment. And I think we're way behind in making sure that our kids are safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you see, when you are online, kids are posting stupid things on TikTok. I don't know where their parents are, but, my kids wouldn't be doing that.
I think you're exactly right. I think it's a parental responsibility to oversee how children under 18 or adolescents under 18 are using the internet. It's complicated though, right? Because if you ban them or you block them, then they're just going to walk out the door and grab someone else's phone and get on some other way. There's these technology, these social media platforms are so addicting, and they're so much a part of the culture that people are living in, that you have to create kind of education, parental education, and parents have to educate kids. There are techniques and tools out there. There are like parent-child agreements that are available so that you can negotiate this with your child. You also have to create like an open dialogue so that if there's something that does happen, that they feel safe to be able to come to an adult, a parent, or some other caregiver. That's really kind of one of the most disturbing things about it, is that when people are kind of groomed into sexual explicit sharing of materials and grooming for sexual violence, they get trapped by these perpetrators, and these perpetrators can create an environment that the kids feel trapped and they don't know how to get out of it. So it is a very difficult situation, and we have to do much more to stop it now.
Right. It's that manipulation that is these kids fall for, and they're easy prey because they're easily manipulatable.
Yeah, and especially the vulnerable kids. If a kid lost a parent, or they're living in a single parent household, or there's economic turmoil in a household, or there's domestic issues in a household, those environments are kind of ripe for going off track with opportunities for sexual predators to go after those kids that are the most vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Now, is there any programs in the schools for these kids to, look for the prevention of this happening?
Absolutely, there are. Many states are requiring education from elementary school all the way through. And it also requires education of all adults that are in proximity to children, like teachers, like custodians, like counselors, like the nurse, like the cafeteria people, all staff, any adult that is in the range of children under 18 also have to be kind of monitored and screened, and also they have to be educated annually is the best model. For example, Florida has a statewide system where they require this kind of training to be done in schools across the state. Unfortunately, right now, it's really a state-determined situation, and it's highly variable. Some states have kind of more strict guidelines about what's required, and other states are more loosey-goosey. And I think that is the problem. And I think there's also problems with tracking predators. There are teachers or priests or other adults who are predators, and then something happens, they get exposed, and then they can move to another state or another geography, and there's no way to track them. In our movement, we it's called kind of like pass the trash. So you have a person you might have a teacher or a coach who's a sexual predator in one environment, and then they get found out, and then they move far away, even to another state, and no one knows where they came from, or no one knows their background. And there's no system right now to track them and to hold them accountable. This is also a problem in the US military, for example. So there's a lot of sexual violence that's happening in the military with military families. Children under 18 are affected by this. And again, military families, as you know, move around a lot. And so there's no good data right now to be able to understand who are the predators, who are the children that have been affected. How do you eliminate this from families that are quite itinerant or nomadic, rather? They're moving around a lot. Mm-hmm. So it's an important challenge that we have to take on.
So with your organization, do you have people calling in and with questions or with problems?
Well, I think our focus of Keep Kids Safe and the Brave movement is focusing on advocacy and campaigning. We're trying to affect public policy at the federal or global level, and then also down, local and state. And so we do have information on our website about what we call duty of care, making sure that there is access to helplines. There are child helplines. There are helplines for support that are available in the United States for sure. There is an organization called Child Helpline International, which is supporting child helplines in 140 countries right now. There's 197 countries, so there's about another 60 that don't have anything, and not all of those 140 that exist right now are actually very good. So we need to do a lot of work. This is basic child rights, and it's kind of disturbing to me that we don't even have good child helplines everywhere, when that is something that could have been in place decades ago. So we have a lot of work to do. This is an issue that is complex and hard to talk about, and I'm really excited that we have survivor leaders and advocates and allies really stepping forward now and demanding bold action immediately, no more delay. The time has come to really take this challenge on.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're launching the Brave movement tomorrow, and how's all that planning? How long did that take to build up?
That's a great question. We worked on a planning process for about 2.5 years, and we received a large grant from the Oak Foundation in September of last year. And for the last 6 months, we've been building out our governance structures, building out our communication strategy, developing our campaign priorities, and networking and mobilizing survivors in different places. And tomorrow is a big day where we're going to open it up even wider and invite more and more survivor advocates, survivor leaders, and all allies to join in this quest to end childhood sexual violence. There's a lot of excitement and a lot of opportunity here for people to engage, and we know that this is happening everywhere, and we know that we can stop it everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Do you also think, between the Keep Kids Safe and now the Brave movement, do you think, somehow this will all dissipate at some point in the future with these perpetrators?
I think that's our hope. Mm-hmm. I believe that is possible. We are standing for that as a possibility. I don't think it's not going to happen quickly or overnight. This dynamic of sexual violence against children and adolescents is kind of embedded in our human culture and the way that we're relating to each other as humans. It's kind of crazy what's going on. I mean, there are laws in some countries right now where sexual violence against a 14 to 17-year-old child is not considered statutory rape. So for example, in the country of Bolivia, they have a law where 0 to 13, it's statutory rape, and 18 and above, it's statutory rape, but 14 to 17, it's not. And this is not unique to Bolivia. This is true in many other countries. The laws that were created around incest in some countries were not criminalizing incest in the same way that we criminalize adult rape. And as a survivor of childhood sexual violence, we think it's rape and it needs to be criminalized as such, as statutory rape for all children. Any sexual predation on children under 18 should be considered by law statutory rape. So this kind of clarification of and transformation of legal rules and systems is, moving forward. The United States is better than other countries, but globally we have a lot of work to do. Mm-hmm. We also need to abolish statute of limitations. We need to allow survivors to hold their victims accountable, their perpetrators accountable. Not only the individual perpetrators, but as you know, many occurrences of childhood sexual violence are occurring within an institutional space, like a religious organization, like a youth club, like the Boy Scouts, like the Catholic Church, or all religious organizations. It's not limited to the Catholic Church at all. It's actually happening in all religions: Jews, Christian, Muslims, Buddhists, Baha'is, everywhere. This childhood sexual violence is not specific to one religion. It's happening in athletic programs. We're seeing more and more of this get revealed. It's happening in music programs for kids. We're hearing more about that. So we're taking the veil off this now. You're hearing about scandal after scandal. You're hearing about crisis after crisis in the United States and globally, right? Mm-hmm. And now what we're trying to bring forward with Keep Kids Safe and the Brave movement is solutions. Mm-hmm. We have a serious crisis. We have a lot of problems, but we also have solutions: prevention, healing, and justice, including, all the fixes that you and your listeners are focusing on in the foster care or child protection systems. A big partner of ours is the National Children's Alliance, and they support all the child advocacy centers, the CSAs, that are up in, I don't remember the exact number of them, but there's hundreds of them around the country. These are programs that manage and negotiate and find solutions for people at the family level and community level to deal with this.
Mm-hmm. What do you do with someone under the age of 18, say 14 or 15-year-old that commits an act of sexual violence on, say, a 6-year-old? Do you ever run into those cases at all?
Yeah, I think you have to take this as a case-by-case situation. So there may be some people that are born with a genetic predisposition to be attracted to young children, and they may be kind of in a situation, a socioeconomic situation, where perpetration of young children may be happening. What's also happening is sometimes they're being groomed online, and they're told to sexually violate their younger sibling as part of the grooming process. This is actually surprisingly not common. So now, then there's another dynamic. So that kind of a child who's 14 who is perpetrating sexual violence against a very young person, that's one scenario that requires a certain kind of pathway. And then there's also like an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old with a 16-year-old, or a 17-year-old with a 15-year-old. So and that's a different situation. So I don't think there's necessarily one size fits all on how we deal with this. That's why these child advocacy centers are equipped to be able to kind of tailor the response depending on the circumstance and depending on the nature of the the sexual violence. So, and I think that we're learning that if an adolescent, for example, is doing peer-to-peer sexual violence, there is an opportunity to intervene early, educate them, transform the way they think about consent and sexual behavior. And, I think there are a lot of programs that are expanding in the U.S. and globally that are trying to look at sexual violence, in that adolescent age group, and trying to see, you don't want to automatically throw everyone into the prison pipeline, right? So you want to try to see if there's a cohort of folks. Some of those kids may need to go there. We don't know, but there's a kind of a significant amount of them that can go through rehabilitation, healing, and monitoring to make sure that they can live with healthy relationships. So there is a movement afoot to kind of create that space for some kids that that you don't want to kind of ruin their entire lives definitively if they made one or two mistakes or something like that.
Are there statistics you may know, you may not know of, it being an inherited disposition where they are, looking for young prey, or, are they groomed? I mean, is there like some type of percentage?
There's many different ways that this is occurring. There is research underway that that is showing that there's a certain percentage of people that may have a genetic predisposition to attraction to young children, and so there are programs being established in some places now to try to identify those people, get them, if they have that attraction, get them into a program to get support so that they don't take action on that attraction. There's another phenomenon that's happening, though, with the online digital world that we're living in now, is that kids under 18 have universal access to pornography. And it's free, and it's explicit, and it can be violent. And so some experts believe that the rampant availability of pornography for that children under 18 have access to is desensitizing some kids and creating a dynamic where they're acting out what they see on pornography, and they're acting that out in real life. So that could be a factor that's leading to this increase in peer-to-peer sexual violence. Certainly it's leading to peer-to-peer posting of sexually explicit materials, cyberbullying and all that kind of stuff that's happening as well. So I think there's a lot of research that's underway right now to really kind of understand how this kind of massive exposure to pornography is affecting sexual behavior as kids go through adolescence and then into adulthood.
I don't know how you get rid of the pornography online. How can we ever get rid of it?
I think that I'm not sure that we can necessarily get rid of it. It's apparently one of the biggest. I think I was told by an expert recently that 50% of internet traffic is pornography, and that the internet pornography on the internet is a huge multi-billion-dollar industry. So there's a lot of people that are profiting from this. So I think we have to look at the kind of financial incentives and the regulatory frameworks. And there can easily be kind of more strict entry criteria. There could be better parental oversight of access to certain kinds of websites. There's technological solutions that we're kind of labeling as a child rights driven approach to the internet. And so if you want to protect the right of a child to grow up healthy and safe and free of sexual violence, then the rules of the game, the regulatory frameworks about how the internet is monitored and regulated has to evolve rapidly and protect child rights. This is a huge issue right now with the social media platforms, because their user agreements actually require that and then ban the transmission of sexually explicit materials, but they don't enforce their own user agreements. And so Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, all these Instagram, all the Snapchat, all these platforms, there's a huge amount of child sexual abuse materials that is circulating, and these companies are not taking sufficient action right now, and they need to be held accountable for that. Greed is killing kids' lives, and they're just focusing on their bottom line, and they're not focusing on ensuring that child rights are protected. And I do think Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg have a personal responsibility to take this on. They are not doing what they should be doing on this.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Now, how can people reach you? I know you're very busy, but how can people reach you if they want to find out more about this that's going to be launched tomorrow? The
Brave Movement. Yeah.
Yes.
So please check out the Brave Movement. It's bravemovement.org. The website is live. And if you want to reach me directly, the best way is through my personal website, Dr. Paul Zeitz, ZEITZ.org. And there's a way that you can connect me right through there. And also I have a lot of books and articles and things that I've written that share these ideas in more detail as well.
Well, I'm so glad I had you on, because this is something parents and everyone should be aware of. And, what time are you launching this tomorrow?
Oh, it's being launched early morning UK time. So by the time we wake up in the United States, it'll be up and live.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we part?
No, thanks, Maryann. I really appreciate your questions and your curiosity about this, and I'm happy to, continue to engage with you and your audience as we bring this work forward.
Definitely, because I was just going to say I'd like to have you back on.
So we agree on that.
Yes, we agree. Well, I won't keep you any further, but thank you for your time, and I'll have you back on again.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Maryann Petri, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Dr. Paul and other exciting guests. Thank you so much.